Tbilisi, Georgia. But obviously, neither of us have been here before.
It's a very random place. I love it though. I love the randomness of this.
We're getting more random. I mean, I think Tom Torero, RIP, had been here previously, but what we want to do next year is start getting to places that are even more random. Ideally, we want to go to some places that no person doing online dating content has been to before. And this is getting there. I mean, it's very foreign feeling, isn't it? It's sort of like, it's not very familiar in the way that like Prague or Poland or something is.
I mean, I spoke to someone yesterday who had just come back from Iran. So that Norwegian bird I met had just been in Iran. I was
Really?
like, is that okay? And she was like, yeah.
Really?
Fine. Yeah.
She probably wasn't running around trying to filming approaches on a DJI for
No, but she would have been trying to run around and get a good seeing to, wouldn't she? We know what Norwegians on tour are like.
Where was she in Iran then? Was that in the capital city?
Don't know, didn't go into it, but I was just like, really? I couldn't believe it. I was like, was it fun? She was like, yeah, people are really friendly. I was just like, all sounds a bit counterintuitive, really.
Yeah. Venezuela?
Venezuela away next year, 100%. We're going to be in January in Bolivia and Argentina, and then we're going to be Venezuela, probably March, Brazil for Carnival. So it's an action-packed year lined up.
What we were talking about at the beginning of the video, though, is this thing about spending, 2-3 days with a girl, going on a trip with a girl that you don't know very well. It's a very, very bad move. It's kind of a, I want to say an amateur move, except that we still do it because we still fall into the rose-tinted spectacles trap.
What I'll tend to do now is actually just fly into their home city and just stay in a hotel separately for a few days and see them as and when, rather than dragging them with me. Because what happens, and we talked about this before, generally speaking, the more feminine the girl, the less independent she is. And obviously we tend to go after quite feminine women. So by default, if you meet a very feminine girl in a foreign country or in a new place, she's going to be pretty helpless on her own, which means she's glued to you 24/7.
Yeah.
So you've got to accept that. So if you're in the hometown, you can go off and do your own thing and then just kind of see her as and when, protect your own time. I think it comes down to really, again, valuing and protecting your own time. It sounds ruthless, but I think it is.
Yeah, the difficulty is, as guys, we tend to think about the end game. We tend to think about
just
sex. But what we don't then think about is, okay, yes, but after the 2.5 minutes when you've done that, then you've got all the rest of the time you've got to spend with her. And do you actually really get on with her, Magda? Do you actually really get on with her as a person? Or is she just somebody, you think she's cute and that's about it? And that really is a big consideration, because 2 days, a weekend can seem like a really, really, really long time when you've got to spend time with somebody and you're not massively feeling it necessarily. Hello.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I was actually speaking to her, doing a few lessons with he's a yoga, sort of hippie yoga instructor, but also a meditation coach. Doing a few sessions with him, he was speaking about exactly about this. He was speaking about Tantra, which sounds very new age and blah, blah, blah. Should I go for that? Excuse me. Hello. Do you speak English? You live here or you moved here? You are tourist? Me tourist. I came to see city. How long do you stay?
I don't understand.
What? Serious? You are like spy. What is this? And how long do you stay when you leave?
I live St. Petersburg.
Ah, okay. I like the city. Last year, I St. Petersburg for 6 months in Rubinsteiner Street. Yeah, and Dumskaya. Everyone. No, I don't like. I like, but Rubinsteiner is good. I just put Pripyat. Yeah, we speak. Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Yeah, so interesting one. Obviously not much exchange there, if we're being realistically honest. I mean,
she was Russian, right?
Russian, barely spoke any English, blah, blah, blah. We did Instagram. But what I found, she's not actually my dream type in terms of looks. I like them taller, skinnier than that usually, and yeah, I mean, face, it was pretty, but it wasn't really my thing. But what I found really attractive about her is that classic kind of polarization of energy. I've just reread the David Data book, Where the Superior Nutsack, obviously a great read, and he's big on this idea of masculine fits with that polarity of feminine energy. So what you tend to find with a lot of Russian women is, and the reason we find them particularly attractive is very, very feminine.
Yeah.
So what happened is I kind of opened her, the other two walked away. She was going to walk away, but I kind of put my hand out, she held it, and then we stayed in that position. And I think it was kind of that dominance that, like the little one, looks like a small mushroom. It was that kind of almost dominant polarity that kept her there. So the conversation was quite charged, even though nothing was really said, and I wasn't actually projecting much sexual intent, but it was just quite a charged.
Well, but
there's quite a nice polarity going on.
yeah, it actually looked like that from a distance, and you know, you say there wasn't much sexual polarity there, but there probably underlying it there probably was, because it's that masculine feminine thing, right?
Yeah.
And it just underlines the fact it's not so much what you say that's important. People think that it's like, oh, I've got to know the, you know, how's my stacking, how do I think about the perfect stack and all this, and it's not really about that, you know? I mean, so much is conveyed through vibe and through physicality, and that can do most of the work for you if you get it right.
Yeah, it's a great point, and actually it's what we've been talking about in the program that we've been running called The Edge, which is essentially how do you incorporate these kind of sexual, I guess, dark triad elements that I guess, you know, quote unquote bad boys tend to encompass. How do you put that into your game? Because most guys, as we know from our own journey, come into it, we're incredibly nice, you know, the stuttering English gentleman, which is great. Yeah, which is great, but we all know that that's not really going to get you laid, right? So for the most part, we start as social and we transition to more sexual. So again, we're going to have version 2 of that coming out probably March, a souped up version 2 with some extra stuff in there, and we're learning stuff from running this group this week and kind of putting more stuff in there as well. So get in touch, again, pre-sale for that if you're interested in joining Edge version 2.
Well, what a multi-stranded video. I mean, what can they draw from that? Don't go away for a weekend with a girl that, you know, if you don't know her very well. And secondly, masculine feminine polarity is absolutely key in the seduction process.
It brings up the whole point though, and this is a point that I've actually been kind of mulling over in recent times, because me and Mr. France have obviously been doing this stuff for a long time, him a lot longer than me, but you can
70 years.
There comes a point when actually what you're thinking is it worth, as a kind of time-saving device, to actually look as good as possible, walk around, and then actually try and be very tuned in, and actually, generally speaking, sometimes just go off the back of IOIs, because what actually happened in that shot was we walked past her the first time and she kind of checked me out. I think she checked you out as well, both of us. She was obviously receptive to the approach, and that probably subconsciously played into me going for it, because it was a relatively high pressure set. I mean, there's 3 girls, right, so it's a bit more high pressure, but the interesting thing is, would I have bothered to go for it now, being me in the stage I'm at with this stuff, if she hadn't kind of given me some semblance of interest? And the purists would argue, yes, absolutely, you should always go in for it.
Yeah.
But I, you know, in my kind of more autumnal years, I have got a bit lazy with it, where I kind of do rely sometimes on just getting the IOI.
Well, maybe it's the inevitable journey of the player that we all kind of end up as Steve Jabber in the end. You know, we're all kind of just, you know, we get a bit fed up with the grind, and we're all just going off IOIs. But I mean, you should absolutely go off IOIs. The only word of caution I think on it is that sometimes you will get, so people who don't know, IOI stands for indicator of interest. So she maybe looks at you, maybe gives you that quick like 2-glance look, or, you know, maybe smiles or whatever. So this is some kind of indication that she could be into you, and you should always approach on that basis, because it will be stupid not to. But sometimes it doesn't go anywhere, because she might still say, well, actually, I've got a boyfriend. It could be that in that second she was sort of attracted to you, but she's not necessarily going to act on it. because thinks that she's got something else going on in her life. So you can't really rely on it. But at the same time, I think increasingly, yeah, really. I mean,
if I'm being honest, that tends to be a strategy I employ, and it can. The flip side to it, obviously, is it makes you a bit lazy. And sometimes you see girls where they haven't noticed you. It's not that they're not interested; they just haven't noticed you. So maybe they're across the street, they've got headphones in, whatever. And the problem with going with the taxi, just relying on indicators of interest, is you do get lazy with some of those approaches.
yeah.
I do actually think it was something that guys asked me a few years back, and I was like, no, I was being very purist about it. My mentality then was, no, you should absolutely, every single hot girl you see, within reason, go for it. But now, I think if you've been doing this for a while, a kind of a moderated version is in order. Yeah. I think where try and look as good as possible, have a good vibe when you're walking around, go out with a wing, have fun, and then you're going to draw in more people anyway.
Yeah.
Absolutely approach them, but if you see an absolute worldie, who you might Andy Holt it for and hang up the Spurs for, then you should go for her regardless of the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and that plays into that whole thing about self-improvement, right? Because we're meant to be like the game aspect of it, the social skills aspect is one thing, but we're also meant to be on this continuous journey of self-improvement, and the greater sort of nick you get yourself into, in terms of your look, your fitness, your fashion, all these kinds of things, you should naturally be getting more sort of interest from people in the street anyway. So it just kind of plays into that, doesn't it, really, Miss Dr. Silk?